Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be going over my day one experiences with the new season, Twin Nightmare for Torchlight Infinite. So, if you don't know, in the past, I've had a few words for Torchlight Infinite, and I really disliked the direction that they were going. Essentially, my biggest problem with them was it seemed like as though every single time there was any slight problem with the game, that they would decide to completely revamp it, remove the old system, and make a new one every single time. And it caused it so that every single new season was a completely different game. Like, for instance, playing season one of Torchlight Infinite was completely different from playing season two of Torchlight Infinite. And if you don't know, for making content for video games, that's very bad, as it really easily invalidates your old content, which means that it kind of doesn't really matter if you make content or not because it's invalidated instantly. And I'm not the kind of person that will leave a video up that is completely misinformed and, actually not correct. So I actually ended up privating a lot of my Torchlight Infinite content, not because like I didn't enjoy the game, but because all of the content in those videos were out of date, which sucked because, I was actually enjoying the game. So I took a break from the game for a few months and now I'm coming back to play it again. And it seems like as though they finally figured out what they want to do with their video game, which is great because that means I can start talking about it again. So this is Torchlight Infinite. I am playing Frostpool.Yuga. Yuga actually got huge buffs this season, specifically with the interaction between his little pool there, like his hero trait, and recording dot damage. So normally it would record your damage over time that you're applying to an enemy, and it give you that damage as extra damage, right? There's a lot of other things that you can interact with this. Now, what they did was they made it so that it not only applies to the reaping that you're applying, right? It also applies to the reap purification that you're applying. This is very important as essentially the entire build philosophy behind stuff like Frostpool is reap purification. If you don't know how reap purification works, it essentially reaps enemies for their dot damage, right? And then it removes said debuff. Now, of course, since it's a dot pool instead of like an ignite or something, it doesn't actually remove the frost pool from the ground. So the dot reapplies, and we get a load of freaking damage from it. And that's the whole reason this build even works, is because of reap purification. So Dot Yuga actually synergizing really well now with reap purification thanks to the recording. It means that I can get a lot of damage for free. Now, this build actually got nerfed in a few ways over the past few months since I played it last. Like, for instance, you're no longer allowed to have 5 different skills in the same cast while channeling link. You can only have one now. So you can't have 5 scorching pulses instead of one, which means that we have to start actually investing into cooldown. And those ways of investing into cooldown actually got nerfed as well, as the old, I can't remember what it was called, but the old cooldown perk in the Warlock tree got turned into additional cooldown recovery speed instead of being cooldown recovery speed scaling on your attack and cast speed. Meaning that, of course, well, guess what? We don't really get that much cooldown anymore. So now we need to get our cooldown of our Scorching Pulse really low so that we can keep reaping things, obviously. And of course, now I need to go and get a bunch of different reap sources to keep up my damage. But the thankfully XD has given us a bone when they reworked the passive tree in a small way this time, not completely drastically reworking it like they did a few times. This time they only made a few small adjustments. This time, what they did was they made it so medium passives in the tree are a lot more um, easy to get and easy to use. So, like for instance, there's this node that gives us a large amount of dot damage percentage, but reduces duration of dots, which doesn't matter for us because we're a Frostpool build. We're not a Wilt build or like an Ignite build. So this reduction in dot damage duration doesn't matter to us, but the dot damage does matter to us and gives us a very large amount of percent damage. And there's a lot of nodes like this on the tree that we benefit heavily from that have downsides that we really don't care about thanks to the fact that we're playing a Frost Terra build, which is great. Other things that this build is utilizing, there is that new skill called I can't remember. I'll bring it up on screen, but essentially it shoots out a star at enemies and it seeks elites and it gives you like 50% additional dot damage. And then of course you can actually use stuff like mania and stuff to empower it even further, which means I think we're getting like double damage from this thing. And I also have it set up so that it shoots out a new one every 7 seconds. And then that's really good because it self-regulates itself for me because we're also utilizing the one that gives you extra effective skill based on the amount of charges it has. So I don't have to constantly press the button, which means that we always have two charges whenever we utilize the new skill, which means we get a bunch of buff effect from that, giving us a very large amount of damage. I'm already at like 80 million DPS with a very lackluster gear. All I have, the only thing I've bought so far was the helmet and the chest, and those were very cheap. So it's been great so far. I'd still need to corrode a bunch of kingly armors till I get one that flips the movement speed downside into a movement speed upside, as of course that will make me very, very, very zoomy. And then eventually I need to start looking into other ways to invest into reaping. Now, if you go down below, you'll actually find a code which you can put in game to find my build now, which is great. Now I can finally share builds without having to spend 5 years putting it into a planner. So if you want to look at my build, it's down below. Now, other things that I've been enjoying about the game. I really like the new league mechanic. I like the gimmick of this big, really scary enemy chasing you while you try to finish objectives throughout the nightmare. If you don't know, nightmare is like a scourge, kind of like league mechanic. So if you don't know, Path of Exile Scourge, where like you flip the map into the red stuff, and then you did the red version of the map, then went back to the normal version. Nightmare is very close to that, where you start out with like this breach thing, you build up a nightmare, and then you go into the nightmare, and that's like the scourge thing. And there's this big elite that chases you while you try to finish objectives and get those little beads, and you get a lot of rewards from it if you can do it properly. Now, these big elites are very scary, they do a lot of damage, and they keep up on you like they're actually a threat inside these zones. Now, I'm sure later on in endgame there are ways probably to mitigate these threats. But right now in the early game, these big elite daddies are very scary. So I'm looking forward to dealing with the nightmare when I'm actually in actual end game content like the deep space and all that. Now, one thing I will say that has changed that for the worse, in my opinion, ever since the last time I played, is I don't like how the current end game system is going. Really, like the generic one. I really like the card system. The old card system where you piled card effects on top of each other and got a reward at the end. That system was it's kind of funny. That system was by far one of the best systems I've ever had joy interacting with, as I really enjoyed their in-game system with the card stuff, stacking cards, getting a bunch of benefits for the last thing in the, the rotation, stuff like that. And they removed it for a much simpler system. Now, of course, this system is much better for your casual player, but I really enjoyed the complexity of building up a deck and then juicing the maps that actually mattered and stuff like that. And all of that combined, like I really enjoyed the old system, so I'm kind of a little bit sad that they removed it, but I understand why. I still need to go more in depth into the new system. I haven't actually played Torchlight since before the last system, so I still need to actually and play it a little bit more and get into deep space content and stuff like that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. That's been my build. This is gonna be the day one update for it, of course. I'm going to keep playing it, keep updating it. There's a lot of things that I am excited to work on this build, as there's a lot of things that I can do to make the damage skyrocket, so it's great. I don't know what the average DPS of an endgame build is anymore. I know back in the day, like getting to 1 billion was a good start, but it seems like as though that has raised significantly due to a little bit of power creep and stuff like that. So we'll see. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else. Bye.